On the night of 23rd December 1888, just a few hours before Christmas, Vincent Van Gogh took a blade and sliced a portion of his left ear. Then, he wrapped it in a piece of cloth, rushed to a nearby brothel, asked for a particular woman and handed it to her. He also asked her to protect this with her life. Upon seeing the cut ear, it is said that the woman fainted. Van Gogh then went back to his house and slept on the bleeding side of his head. The next morning, he was taken to the hospital. Van Gogh had almost killed himself. 150 years later, after this incident and countless hours of investigation, we still do not know exactly why Van Gogh did this. There are three possible reasons behind it, and one of these reasons is quite dark. There's love, there's hatred, and a lot of emotional pain behind this story. In this video, I'll explain why Van Gogh cut his ear off, and more importantly, why did he give his cut ear to a particular woman? We'll also look at the possible relationship he had with this mysterious woman. It is impossible for a person to not have any idea about Van Gogh or his paintings. He's arguably the most popular artist in the world. His influence can be seen everywhere, from clothing to movies and much more. But this wasn't always the case. When he was alive, Van Gogh was an unknown, unsuccessful artist trying to make things work. In fact, he became famous years after his death, and for many, Van Gogh is the perfect example of the tortured artist. He lost everything: his passion, his dreams, and in the end, his sanity. The ear-cutting incident was the first time everyone around Van Gogh, including the artist, realized that he was mentally ill. He realized what he could do when he lost control, and that was terrifying. Van Gogh died when he was just 37 years old. He shot himself and died a slow and painful death 2 days after. And while his death was the end of his madness, the ear incident was the beginning of it. There has been a long debate about the reason why the artist sliced his ear off. People often argue whether the artist cut his ear off or just a small piece of it. Well, there are sketches by the doctor who treated Vincent showing how much of the ear was cut. The details are still under murky water. The authenticity of these sketches are debatable, and this topic alone deserves a video of its own. But what's for certain is that Van Gogh did cut his ear that night. There are three reasons that affected his mind so much that it led to a complete mental breakdown. Now, before we get into that, it's important to know that these three reasons are not clear-cut or separate. And what I mean by that is, all these three reasons worked in tandem as one dark wave that took control over his mind. I have separated them to better explain his situation. So the three reasons are the devastation of his dreams, his mental health, and something called love token. Now keep an eye out on this one, because out of all the three reasons, the most disturbing part is the concept or practice of love token. Van Gogh had a dream, an ambitious dream that was very close to his heart. He wanted to set up the Yellow House. This house would be a studio for like-minded artists who would share their space to create beautiful artworks. He rented 4 rooms in this house, and in a letter to his brother, he wrote, "Well, today I rented the right wing of this building, a sketch is enclosed, which is made up of 4 rooms, or rather 2 with 2 closets. It is painted yellow outside. Inside the walls are white lime washed, facing the sunshine. I got it for a rent of 15 francs a month." You can almost hear the happiness in these written words, which show how passionate Van Gogh was for his dream. Knowing what's going to happen next, it just makes the story even more heartbreaking. The dream got off to a great start. The famous painter Paul Gauguin shared a room in this house, creating some brilliant paintings. This is perhaps one of the happiest times for Van Gogh. Both the artists made painting inspired by each other's art style. Even for a few days, Van Gogh truly believed that the Yellow House would be a reality. But then things changed. Van Gogh was stubborn, and Paul Gauguin was filled to the brim with pride. He was known to be a narcissist. Naturally, this was not a great pairing. Paul Gauguin and Van Gogh got into a lot of heated arguments, some even claiming that they got in physical fights. After the argument on 23rd December, when Van Gogh had cut his ear, Paul Gauguin told him that he would never return to the house, essentially ending the plan of the Yellow House. This was a major blow to Van Gogh's mental health and his dream. Without Gauguin, the Yellow House was nothing but just a rented house with one struggling artist. The dream of making a proliferating art studio crashed and crumbled. But the worst was yet to come. There is another theory that says that it was Paul Gauguin who attacked Van Gogh, but after realizing what he had done, begged Vincent to take the blame. While this can be true, there is no evidence for it. Sadly, most of what we know about the incident comes from the notes of Gauguin, so the authenticity of it is dubious at best. Van Gogh was not well mentally. He was born and brought up in a poor family and had always struggled to fit in with people. At the young age of 20, he had a mental breakdown after getting rejected by a woman for marriage. He knew about the turbulent state of his mind and, sadly, he remedied it with tobacco and alcohol. In a letter to his brother Theo, he wrote, "If the storm within rose too loudly, I drink a glass too many to stun myself. It's been crazy compared with what one ought to be." Van Gogh was a heavy drinker and a heavy smoker, both of which affected his mental health and sleep quality. It was a ticking bomb that detonated on that night of the argument. He had an outburst that he could not control, something that could have ended his life. It was such a big incident that when the police found Van Gogh in a pool of his own blood, they thought Gauguin had murdered him. Gauguin, who was sleeping in a hotel that night, was arrested and questioned. Even back then, no one exactly knew what had happened. The news reports were littered with misinformation. Some newspapers called Van Gogh Polish, while others called him Van Gogh. Here's a bit from a newspaper reporting the incident. Last Sunday at 11:30 in the evening, Vincent Van Gogh, a painter of Dutch origin, called at the brothel number 1, asked for a woman called Rachel and handed her his ear, saying, "Guard this object with your life." Then he disappeared. When informed of the action, which could only be that of a pitiful madman, the police went the next day to his house and discovered him lying on his bed, apparently at the point of death. The unfortunate man has been rushed to hospital. Notice the name of the woman mentioned here. It is important to the story. I have seen so many false narratives relating to this incident. Some say that Van Gogh used to hear voices in his head and that's why he cut his ear off. This is completely false. It was after this incident that he started losing his mind. Other reasons include that Van Gogh used to eat paint to make him feel happy. This is completely false. While he did eat paint, it was way after his mental breakdown. And the reason why he ate paint was not because he wanted to feel happy. It was because he wanted to kill himself. So now we have somewhat of a clear picture. Van Gogh was not mentally well, and the heated argument with Gauguin made him realize that he had lost his dream. This desperation boiled up, and the only thing that he could do to express this pain and frustration inside him was by cutting his ear off. But what really confuses people is what he did after cutting his ear. Why would he wrap the ear and give it to this Rachel woman and ask her to keep it carefully? Well, this brings us to the third reason, and probably the darkest of the three. Van Gogh rushed to the brothel to give his cut ear to a woman named Rachel. Now, despite all the misinformation that was reported back then, this is actually true. But here's something interesting. Rachel was not her real name. It was actually Gabrielle Berlatier. Apologies if I mispronounced that name. Gabrielle was the daughter of a poor farmer and had her own tragic story. Let's refer to her as Rachel. As it was reported back then, and something many people believe, Rachel was not a prostitute, even though she worked at a brothel. She was just a cleaner there. But why did she take such a job? Well, it is said that she had contracted rabies, and she had to take any job she could to get to pay for her treatments. Her family was already in debt, and this poor girl did not want them to suffer more for her. So she worked wherever she could to get a living. It is said that she might have worked in some restaurants where Van Gogh met her and got to know her more. But that still does not explain why he gave her his ear. There is one theory that explains it, and it's quite dark. Van Gogh was influenced by Japanese art and culture. In many of his letters, he talks about being inspired by Japanese artists such as Hokusai. In one of his letters dated July 1888, he wrote, "All my work to some extent is based on Japanese art." He also had many Japanese print paintings with him. In fact, in this painting titled Self-Portrait with Bandage, which was obviously made after the ear incident, one can see the painting Geishas with a Landscape by Seito Torakiyo. Now, there used to be a practice in Imperial Japan, and sadly it is still present in some parts of the country. It was called Shinju, and it means double suicide. While there are various types of Shinju, the most common one is when two lovers commit suicide to show their dedication for each other. Now, a watered down version of this practice was when two lovers would cut a part of their body and give it to each other as a token of love. So, it is very likely that Van Gogh was giving a love token to Rachel. This explains why he asked her to keep it safely with her. Now, this is not a certain proof, but given how much he was influenced by Japanese culture and probably he was in love with Rachel, it is very possible that Van Gogh, in his madness, wanted to show his love. In a letter to his brother after this incident, he wrote, "Yesterday, I went back to see the girl I went to when I went out of my mind. I was told there that things like that aren't at all surprising around here. She had suffered from it and had fainted, but had regained her composure. And what's more, people say good things of her. The real reason behind this act will never be known. It is very possible that Van Gogh had fallen in love with this girl, not because of how she looked or what she did, but because of their mutual suffering, which made them similar." And that was all in this video, and the story behind Van Gogh's ear. What do you think could be the reason behind this? Mention all your thoughts in the comments section below. And I love reading everyone's comments. Thank you all for watching this video. Till we meet next time, have a great day ahead.